Hey, what's up guys? David Johnson here, and we are on a rooftop in Haiti looking at how to shoot time-lapse photography. Let's get to it. Alright, welcome in guys. Today we're looking at time-lapse photography. Now sometimes time-lapse photography gets a little bit of a confusion along with it just because people don't know exactly what it is whenever they're talking about it or featuring it in a film or something like that. Time-lapse is not video that's just sped up. I know that can get confused when you look at your smartphone and you have a time-lapse setting or something like that. Time-lapse is actually a series of photos that are sped up to a rapid frame rate. So we're talking something like 60 frames in 1 second. So you get a very fast movement along a long period of time. Now, that's where time-lapse comes into play with photography, because you actually go out and you shoot these photographs over a very long period of time, and you take roughly 300 to 400 photographs and speed those up in post-processing, and you create a time lapse of whatever you were shooting at the moment. Well, what are we shooting right now? We're shooting a mountain sunrise behind me. I have a telephoto lens 70 to 200 set up on my camera right now. I'm shooting that mountain right there. We're actually going through the series of sunrise shots, starting off really dark and then ending pretty bright on the sunrise spectrum. We don't have a lot of clouds with this one, but we do have some good color, hoping to get some good glow on the top of the mountain as the sun rises. So it's already starting to look pretty good right now, getting some red glow up on the mountaintops. But let's talk about a few things you can do with time-lapse photography. Number one thing you kind of need to be aware of whenever you're shooting is composition. What is your overall time-lapse going to look like? You need to be aware of that because you're going to be moving through so many photographs and editing those over 600. So you need to be very aware of what your composition actually looks like and how well that's going to look as well. Number two thing you need to be aware of is weather. Weather changes rapidly, especially in some harsh conditions. So you need to be very aware of what the weather is going to be at any given moment. Wind speed is a big one that I've learned can really damage a time lapse. There are some things in post-processing you can do to fix that. Wind causing camera shake is a big thing in time-lapse, because when you speed that up, you may not be able to see it frame by frame, but when you speed it up, you're going to see the littlest camera shakes possible. That is a big issue with time-lapse. So if you're dealing with wind speed, make sure you have like a weight you can put on the bottom of your tripod to kind of hold that in place. Also a camera bag, if you can clip that to the bottom of your tripod and steady that and weight that down in the center. Another really good hack for you to weigh down your tripod and kind of fight that wind speed. Number three thing you really need to worry about is clouds and color. Now, clouds and color, if you're shooting a sunrise or a sunset, can be a big deal with time-lapse, just because a lot of times the changing in clouds and the changing in color in the clouds can really make or break a time-lapse. This morning we don't have any clouds to shoot, but we do have the changing in color that we can shoot on the mountains behind me with a 70 to 200 lens. Even though we don't have clouds moving around and we get that nice like epic sky that everybody loves to shoot, you can still zoom in on your composition and feature a small detail rather than a huge sky. If you do have those clouds, make sure you're shooting at a fast enough frame speed, like one shot every 2 seconds minimum, to capture the movement of those clouds. Because sometimes if you're shooting above that, your clouds are going to be a little bit jumpy. So we need to be thinking about what are we shooting, how fast are we shooting, how fast are they moving, and then go forward with the process of shooting time-lapse. So more recently, cameras have been making it a lot easier to shoot time-lapse using just your camera, and that's great. I have an app on my camera, the Sony a6000, called Time-Lapse in the Play Memories Camera App Store that you can download onto the camera and use to shoot your time-lapse. But if you don't have something fancy like that on your camera, you can always shoot time-lapse with one thing. This guy right here is going to help you a ton in shooting time-lapse. This is a cable release, also called a shutter release, also called a remote shutter. This helps you a ton with any type of shooting if you're trying to reduce camera shake or you're setting up, a lot of shots in a row. What this can do is plug into the side of your camera, and when you plug it in, it acts as your shutter. So you can actually take photos with this. But what you do with the cable release is you press down on this button and it has a hold. If you want to do time lapse, you have to make sure your shutter release has a hold option on it. And you just press this down and slide it up to lock it in place. And what that does is tells your camera, I want to continue taking photos at a rapid pace or over a long period of time. You can do this with time-lapse photography during the day, at night, whatever, and your camera will automatically know that the shutter is being held down. Now, before you use it, you have to set your camera up to a high speed frame rate or multiple frames in a row. You can't set it up for just one shot. You can't set it up for a 2-second delay. You have to use the high frame rate or continuous shooting feature on your camera. But when you do that, once you press the shutter release down and lock it into place, it's going to know to continuously take photos throughout the time lapse. That way anyone can shoot time-lapse photography no matter what kind of camera you have. This even works on cameras like film. Just make sure your film roll has enough photos for you to take a time-lapse on. Alright guys, so that basically covers on how you shoot a time-lapse sequence with photography. It's really not complicated. A lot of people make it overly complicated. You can shoot time-lapse with the most basic gear possible. Let's see how this one turned out.